Hello and welcome to the March FinOps Summit. We are the FinOps Foundation. I have highlighted two words on here that are really important. We're here to advance the people who do this work of cloud financial management. For the new folks, I always like to say, I don't care what you call it, cloud financial management, FinOps, cloud cost optimization. It's all about getting the most value out of cloud, and we're here to support you in that. My name is J.R. Stormont. I am the Executive Director of the Foundation. And today we are doing part 2 of the State of FinOps, which was our annual survey. Today's data, we're going to pull out information about salaries, what people are making, job titles, reporting structures, and also container data. Next month, by the way, we tease this, we're going to get into tooling choices by practitioners. So hopefully you come in April. So the agenda for today, because we've got a lot, I want to throw this out there. I'm going to cover some highlights, some introductions. I'm going to make some announcements about some new events that we've never done. And then we're going to do a panel on State of FinOps. We're going to dig into, I might be teasing some things here, careers, education, jobs, potentially some scholarships. And then a big chunk of content that I hope you stay for is the Container Working Group. This group has put together an amazing view on how to start to look at container cost allocation via different personas. We're going to talk about ambassadors and more events, and then a bunch of working group updates. That's the meat of what this organization does, is bring you all together to work together. At the end, 25 minutes of breakouts to dig into any of the topics, or stay in the main room to dig in more about the state of FinOps. Our mission is to advance you, again, the people who do this work through community, which is what this is, through education, and through standards, which we're going to touch on shortly as well. What I wanted to talk about, though, and I put this a few slides in so people were still trickling in, is resilience. So my voice is a little cracky today because I went to a conference last night, or not a conference, I went to a concert, and it was the first concert I've been to since 2019. It's my kid's birthday week, and I took him out late to see Imagine Dragons here in Portland. Really exciting. In a couple days, we're going to be mask free. The world seems to be turning around in a lot of places in regards to COVID. It's also not turning around in other places, and there's a bunch of other really tough things happening in the world. But the guy during the concert he asked everybody, put up your hand if you've lost somebody in the last 5 years. And thousands of people, put up their hands. And then he reminded us all to be really grateful for what we have and the fact that we're still standing and we're still going forward and we're still able to make life work. And it was a good reminder that even though life's getting back to normal for a lot of us, it's getting turned upside down for a bunch of other people. And I believe in our ability to bounce back. I do it. I've seen a lot of you do it. And it's really the core of FinOps. I think it is about resilience. You get started in cloud, you hit something that knocks you back, you get back into it, you make some progress, you get knocked back, you build the muscle, you get knocked back, you build the muscle. And that's really what we're all here to do together, is help be resilient, build the muscle of, living, but really about how do we manage cloud better, but it's a metaphor for that. So excited to have you all here. As a reminder, we have a code of conduct because this is a community and it's not just a one-way webinar. We want you to contribute and we want you to be respectful at the same time. We want you to include others from other walks of life and other places and other views and others with other ideas as well, because not everybody agrees. And we ask that you don't do sales pitches. Contribute knowledge, contribute best practices, don't do advertisements, share what you've seen in the market. The FinOps-averse, as we like to call it, is growing and broad. We do a lot of things at the foundation. We're going to touch on a lot of these. Takeaway here is there's a lot of ways to get involved, and we want you to be engaged. At the end, Joe Daly is going to talk about engagement ideas across each of these. And everything we do is wrapped around what we call the FinOps framework. It's on finops.org, something you can contribute to. It feeds education, education feeds it. It feeds Slack, Slack feeds it. So please look at that and see where you can help plug in. Wanted to give a big shout out to Daryl Sackett, who has just joined our governing board as part of Software One. They are the featured premier member for this summit. They're essentially bringing the summit to you. We're going to hear a little bit from Daryl later. So thank you, Daryl and Software One, for being a part of this. There's also a large number of other companies around the world who have put their hands up to be both financially supporting the FinOps Foundation, but also pouring a lot of time and effort of their SMEs into best practices. So thank you especially to all our premier members: Cloud Health, Google Cloud, SADA, Deloitte, Accenture, Verticent, Aptio Cloudability, McKinsey & Company, Nordcloud, Software One, Tencent, Spot by NetApp, including CloudCheckr, IBM, and Apple Inc. There's also 38 general member companies who've supported us and are also great contributors in the community. Thank you all for being a part of this. But most importantly, there are now well over 5,000 practitioners doing this work in the community, and really great to see a lot of you join here today. So the governing board is growing. We're going to hear from a few of these folks. IBM just joined us. Lee is going to hear from him next month. We heard from Benjamin Coles at Apple last month. We're going to hear from Daryl Sackett today. This group drives strategy for the foundation. The Technical Advisory Council just had elections. This group can't really grow. It's locked to right now 11 people, and it's the group that drives standards and best practices. It's made up of practitioners. It's made up of clouds. I've got these sorted alphabetically by the company names. You'll see it's sort of all different types of companies and people. This group is about, are the standards we're putting out the right standards? We're going to hear later today from the 2 new people who got elected. There were, I think, 14 folks who put their hands up for the election. William Bryant, who's in finance at Apple, won the election. Awesome to have William here. And then Kim Weir, who's in engineering at Target, also got on there. We're going to hear from Kim here shortly as well. Welcome. And of course, the staff continues to grow. Really want to thank everybody who puts all the work into getting this summit going. A special shout out to Steve Trask, who I don't think sleeps for the 4 or 5 days ahead of the summit. And to Tom Sharp, who's not on this slide, who recently joined us as a contractor doing all the graphics work. So thanks everybody for all the work. All right, let's talk about community highlights. This is not a webinar. You are on video if you're willing to do so, and you can talk later if you want to do so. Hundreds of people contribute to the FinOps Foundation every month. This is a list of people that did it since the last summit in February. We're going to dig into each of these areas, but wanted to thank you all as individuals. This is the beating heart of what we do. The vast majority of these people aren't getting paid for this and are doing it on the side, so your efforts are very much appreciated. Now, in the topic of resilience, we are going back to in-person events. The foundation is going to be kicking off a roadshow of regional events, first of all, in key geos. The others are not announced yet. London is, and that is happening on March 28th. This is going to be probably a 200-person event, really easy to access. It's near Liverpool Station, and we're going to have a fantastic expert panel. We'll get an announcement about that shortly. We're going to have conversation, networking, but the biggest thing is you get to grab a beer or a cider or a water or a tea or whatever you drink and stand across from your peers and talk about how things are going, talk about FinOps. Thanks for the sponsors who are supporting that. They're going to have tables there. Go to finops.org to register your interest for that. And now, the big unveil for me, the thing I'm excited about. We are very excited to announce the first official in-person conference that we are doing called FinOps X, which is happening in Austin, Texas. Great place. June 20th to 21st. This is our first official conference. It is going to have hundreds of folks. We're still figuring out the exact numbers. We have the space reserved. It's 2 days. It is a full day of content, main stage content, and breakout tracks with smaller talks. It's going to be a full day of in-person training. This is the first time anybody's, at least in the US and I believe in the UK or EU, that they've been able to get in-person FinOps training, get FinOps certified. We're going to have tons of networking activities attached to this. And it is part of the open source summit that the Linux Foundation is doing. So there's 5 or 6, maybe even 10 other co-located conferences happening. So lots of opportunities to network. There's container conferences, there's open source conferences, there's Linux bits. Go to x.finops.org. You can register interest there. The big thing right now is that we are looking for speakers. If you want to come to Austin, Texas, it's going to be a little warm. The weather's going to be fantastic. Great barbecue, interesting mix of culture, middle of the country. We would love to have you there. Put up your hand on that form if you want to speak. We're going to be putting together, I think, a really compelling set of content. The reason you can't officially register yet is the open source summit registration doesn't launch until next week. We're part of that. So once that launches, there'll be official registration for them. But put in your name here now and we'll get you the details. Really want to see you all in person. We're going to follow this up, as I said, with other regional events and look to do one as well in the UK or Europe, and also possibly one in APAC. All right. With that, I think we are through the intros, and let's start talking about what you all came here for, which is the State of FinOps Data 2022. Reminder for those who weren't here last time, we wrapped up this survey, I think it was the end of January. We had about 1,000 respondents, 65 questions. It was a big ask. It took 20 minutes to answer. There was some really meaty stuff in there, like what is your salary, that we asked people to share. And a big spread of cloud spend, about $40 billion reported that people were managing between all the respondents, anybody from small spends to sizable collection. I think about a dozen of organizations are spending more than $1 billion a year in cloud. And from this, we pulled a lot of data that we're rolling out slowly. Head back or view on the demographics. Sorry, tired and voice frozen from the concert last night. I got home at like midnight. Mainly large companies leaning into FinOps. 70% of the respondents were from those over 1,000 companies, a lot over 10,000, a big group over 100,000. All over the world, we're seeing FinOps practice everywhere. We're now working even in China. There's a FinOps group spinning up. This practice is taking hold across the globe and in all industries. Big ones we see, IT, tech, those areas. Financial services is the largest, but the long tail, covers retail, energy, automotive, oil and gas, everything. So with that, again, thank you to SoftwareOne for sponsoring this summit, our one featured premier member. We're going to do introductions to the panel, but before we do that, I wanted to give Daryl, who recently joined our governing board, and he is the head of both FinOps and ITAM at SoftwareOne, which I think is an interesting mix, to take a minute and introduce himself and SoftwareOne. Daryl. Hopefully,
thanks very much. They are hopefully coming through loud and clear.
Sounds great.
Firstly, thank you to everyone for having me on. Great to be with you today. So as JL said, I've joined the governing board recently this year and just wanted to literally spend 2 minutes, give you a short synopsis on myself and a little bit about SoftwareOne. So I'm based in Europe, in London, for SoftwareOne. I sit on the executive leadership team. I lead the FinOps service line primarily. I also have a history and a legacy that comes up through the IT asset management, or the ITAM part of the business, hence also sort of safeguarding that. So yeah, I mean, as JL said, I love firstly the theme about resilience. Thank you for that. I think that resonates really well. I think, secondly, from my perspective and looking at how we engage with the community firstly, and also the industry and the ecosystem as a whole. I kind of wanted to maybe baseline on who and what SoftwareOne is, because we change a lot. We've made over 16 acquisitions in the last 2 years, and we continue on that sort of growth and trajectory. So just wanted to give all of you a quick sort of rundown here, going left to right. We've all been in cloud probably for quite a while. We've been doing SaaS for a whole bunch of years. The gray slogan at the bottom, I was joking with JL and Steve yesterday, it's not meant to be serious, please don't take it seriously. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I joked that SoftwareOne was doing FinOps before it existed. What I mean by that is we've been in and around cloud with the hyperscalers, looking at spend, looking at SaaS for many, many years. But I hope that many of you would probably sort of align with it, that many years ago, we were sort of shooting in the dark. We didn't necessarily have a framework, a guidance, a structure, a proper built out framework of how to do this cloud stuff, which now under the sort of FinOps Foundation and FinOps framework does have that home and does have that sort of leading light, if you like. We currently manage over $5 billion of consumed cloud spend across the major hyperscalers that you would expect. And I think an interesting stat, which most maybe don't know, is that we over 9,100 employees right now, 90 countries around the world. So we have a fairly large FinOps practitioner community, over 150. We invest a lot in terms of certifications, training, and sort of having that best of breed community. We've got the badges, we're the service provider. We've also got a FinOps certified platform ourselves. I think where this really comes to the fore is that we focus our FinOps journey around the transformation story. It's not just about, hey, you're going into cloud, well, this is the great framework to operate around. It's more about how do we change business models? How do we change commercial models? How do we change the way that people and communities and organizations actually operate and function? And what we mean by that is we've moved thousands of workloads and literally thousands of applications, both modernized or native, into the cloud. And as you do that, you need to wrap FinOps and the foundation and the whole sort of methodology around that. So that's kind of the premise of what we do. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daryl. Excited to have you on the board and now officially be my boss. And great that you're both FinOps platform certified and service provider. I think there's only a couple of those in the world. So thank you for being part of this. Would like to introduce the rest of the panel. William, I'm shaming you a little bit here. You've bought the certification but haven't finished it yet, so you're the only unbadged person. So maybe I'll go to you first, William, if you could take a minute to introduce yourself, what you do, and maybe how your team is structured at Apple.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. William Bryant, work at Apple, work in finance org, managing FinOps. I live in Houston, Texas for the moment, and I have a oil and gas background. So I worked in IT and worked in corporate IT in the oil and gas industry for a number of years. Then I went on to grad school, got an MBA because I wanted to kind of make a switch to, learn a little bit more about the business. Got to grad school and started geeking out on finance a little bit. So made that transition. While I was in grad school, we were actually doing migrating to the cloud from on-prem. And so I was kind of working on that, moving workloads from data centers to colos and then a third-party cloud. And so I started managing our spend, started getting firsthand experience on the complexities of cloud and the complexities of managing cloud spend and things like that. Then I joined Apple. And so, yeah, that's what I do at Apple. I pay the bills, partner with a lot of the engineering teams and trying to find ways to best, utilize our resources. I handle all the chargebacks and things like that. So
I can't imagine the chargeback bills that you're seeing.
Slightly bigger than, they're up there.
Yeah. Also really interesting is that, worked with your counterpart, Benjamin Coles, who's on our governing board now. You report into finance, right? You're in the CFO org, although you've got engineers on your team. Yeah.
So I'm in the traditional, we're in the finance org, and I'm on the traditional finance side, right? We do a lot of the chargeback and things like that. Ben is on a team we call finance decision support. So they're a lot of the muscle, right? So they're the engineers that do handle a lot of the infrastructure for a lot of the things we like to do. Ben is pretty much my counterpart on that side. So yeah.
Great. Welcome, William. Excited to have you on the TAC. William had also shared when we did the onboarding that he wants to contribute to the FinOps for Finance course they're working on. So excited to get plugged in there. Let's turn to Kim now, if we can, who I think, Kim, you have kind of the opposite setup. You're in engineering and pretty much all engineers, right?
Yeah, I think everything that William just said is kind of opposite. So I started in business and I transitioned into target technology. So I'm Kim Weir. I am Director of Engineering at Target, and my team is called Efficiency Engineering. We've officially been on our FinOps journey for about a year and a half. And so we have been working on developing new tools for all of Target Tech to use to understand where their, efficiency opportunities are and how to improve. And so my team sits within the technology organization. We're in the infrastructure org specifically. And we have about 18 to 20 engineers who are working on developing these solutions. We don't actually have any finance people within my team. We do have finance partners and we meet with them regularly, but they're not a cohesive part of actually being in my team.
Cool. That's a large team. You're on the upper spectrum of what we're seeing out there. Exciting. Is that all in-house, or do you work externally with consultants, contractors as well?
That's all in-house.
Wow. Excellent. So we did hear from Daryl. So we'd love to, Steve Trask, if you could give a quick intro as well on your role.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Trask. I work at the foundation. I primarily help get content to the community and really reduce the friction for you to be able to contribute around the digital aspects, around the kind of marketing, around the events, work with the vendors as well. But primarily as well, I've been looking after the state of FinOps. I've been involved with the foundation since the creation and came on as a full-time employee August last year.
And I made Steve, I volunteered him for being a last minute panelist because he has been in this data at the deepest levels for the last 3 months and really has owned the survey. So he's got some great insights that I was hoping he could contribute as we go as well. So with that, let's get into the content and start pulling out some interesting insights, hopefully. So one of the questions we asked is, what are the job titles that are happening in your team and what is your job title. And not surprisingly, we saw a huge spread. There were literally hundreds of different job titles. Things you'd see cloud economics up there, you see engineers, you see finance. Steve, what stood out as you were looking at this data?
I think for me, just the range was huge. We are passing this data to the working group Advancing Careers, and also kind of for me is the kind of seniority. They've got the managers, directors, heads, leads. It's a lot, not so contribution, but there are a lot of leaders in this already as well. But also there's just the aspect, there's products in there on the left-hand side, there's solution architects. And I think it's just interesting how they're going to come together over the next 4 or 5 years. How are these going to solidify down, or is it going to continue to be so broad? I'd love to hear from everyone else to figure out how is it structured in your teams, and do you see them kind of coming together slightly in the future?
So William, who's on your team? Do you see titles here that are relevant, or are there others that you're interacting with outside of this?
Yeah, I've seen a few of those. Kind of all of them with different, slightly different titles. We have an org with we just brought on a couple of FinOps analysts. I think there's another role up and up for one at Apple now. A lot of the engineers, pretty much a lot of the engineering orgs. Quite a few product managers, SAs, absolutely. DevOps engineers, yeah. So pretty much everything on this list. Cloud operations, we have a different name internally, but yeah, they're the team that manages our cloud infrastructure. So yeah, we see all of these.
You mentioned when we spoke before that you're also hiring. You're going to look at opening up some roles. What are you going to be looking for when you're doing that?
Oh yeah, we have a few roles coming down the pipeline, probably within the next month or two, hopefully within the next month. Definitely a financial analyst, with still trying to decide on what skills I want to bring on. I need more of the traditional finance stuff, finance and chargebacks, and work with the teams on budgeting and things like that. And then hopefully some cloud knowledge. And then bring on another person, probably with slightly more technical capabilities, but hopefully, has a familiar with cloud billing and the economics of cloud and things like that. So, person that I think one of the big things is being able to, maybe do your own reporting from a technical side, like, running your SQL queries and things like that. So those are kind of the things I'm looking for. But we're still writing the recs. I'll get them out there. Hopefully by the next summit, I'll have some concrete things.
We love the feature too. Every time I hear these job descriptions, I always think unicorn, which is increasingly roles. Can you write SQL queries and understand, chargeback and do all the things?
Yeah.
Kim, anything to add here before we jump to the next one?
At Target, we basically have engineers. We do a lot of data analysis. So we have people who specialize in data, and then application, software engineers who are doing application development, and then product ownership.
Awesome. So the next question we asked was, where does this report in your organization? And I think there's actually been some interesting conversation about what the CTO is versus the CIO in certain organizations, but the overwhelming answer was it did roll into tech. I've always kind of thought that was a bit of like the fox guarding the hen house. It makes sense, because the tech org understands cloud, but eventually, maybe it should be moving over to the CFO or other places, maybe even COO. Dara, what are you seeing with your customers and in the market?
Yeah, look, I think from my side, this aligns pretty well, as you say, CIO, CTO, CFO, typically sort of the landing zones for the teams that I see. I think COO is an interesting area, probably less so. And I think procurement outside of doing the contracts and the commitments, probably less over time, is my sort of gut feel. So I think alignment to the overall technology tower makes sense. Yeah.
Excellent. How does it work for you, Kim? I mean, you've mentioned that you're in engineering. You've got a lot of different VPs out there who are interacting with it. But Does your, finance org, you don't have the finance people, do they spend time? Do they care? Do you have like dotted line input from them?
There's no dotted line. We do have finance partners. Our FinOps journey really came from two directions. One, we have a senior vice president who, within infrastructure, he really leads the infrastructure organization. He had this idea for developing an efficiency engineering capability, but at the same time, our cloud costs, because of COVID and people shopping at target.com, our cloud costs went up. So that gave visibility into our CIO. And so he works with the finance people to understand, how we're trending on all of our finances. So it was kind of this big boom that came together to create our team. But yeah, we don't have any finance people on our team, but we regularly, at least on a monthly basis, talk about our forecast, talk about our spend, and we project out into future years as well.
Okay. And you've got a big team, which I think is an interesting segue into the next one. And I'm wondering, Steve, if you can walk us through some of the data about team sizes that we saw in the survey.
Yeah, so last year we were pretty static in kind of how we asked those questions. So this year, it didn't change massively when we looked at the average figures. So we decided to break it out by the self kind of described maturity. And you can really see between the crawl, walk and run, how those team sizes are kind of currently and how they're planning to grow. Which is great to see. It's expanding. There's definitely it's evolving as people adopt cloud and require the kind of discipline. But yeah, I'd be really interesting to the panelists to kind of like, are you seeing this? Are you kind of making the same plans? And what are your thoughts around it? Maybe I have to put that out to Kim.
Yeah, so we're really at that crawl moving into walk phase. I think it comes down to, what the organization is doing from a tooling perspective. If you're partnering with a software company to acquire the tools that you need versus building your own solutions. So we're building all of our solutions in-house, and that requires a large team. I think it also comes down to the complexity of your environment. We have a really large private and public cloud presence, and we're expanding into other cloud providers. So that all takes human power too. And so that's where our team size is where we're at right now. We may grow in the future as well this coming year.
I got to ask the elephant in the room question. Why are you building in-house? Why aren't you using something?
Our CIO is really a strong advocate for self-development. And so most technology at Target is built in-house.
Fascinating. So it's cultural as part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So William, you probably, I've heard that Apple probably spends a lot of money in cloud, and yet it sounds like you've got a fairly small team. How are you figuring out what the right team size is, and how are you making decisions about who to hire when, and what are the growth plans?
Well, we're definitely growing, but we have, various teams around the org. We partner with a lot of different engineering teams, and internally, finances, we're central, right? And so we partner with so many of the different departments and orgs within the organization. And each one of those teams, they may have someone dedicated to, some SREs that are dedicated to maybe being more efficient and things like that. So we're still early. I mean, we've been in cloud for a while, but we're still early in terms of maturity and doing FinOps and things like that. So our journey is slightly unique, but we're definitely growing internally. Like I said, Ben and myself, we're really pushing FinOps internally, and now we're trying to really roll it out across the board. So yeah, we're probably I would definitely say, I'm gonna be honest with you, we're probably somewhere definitely in between crawling and walking. Maybe we're standing up, taking a step, and falling down. I think that's where we are.
Sounds like you're building the resilience as you go.
Yeah.
The muscle of
Absolutely.
Daryl, anything to add on this one?
I think it's interesting, maybe if I just tie 2 or 3 threads from the previous slides together. I think we're starting to see more organizations take a more structured approach when they enter cloud. So I think we're starting to see a disconnect between some of the spend in cloud and the team sizes versus the time in cloud, right? Yeah. So we want to do FinOps from day one correctly. And also going back to the roles, I think we start to see more around things like FP&A reporting, but also change. So whereas adoption and change management, we're very heavily on the technology and commercial, what I call the techno-commercial sort of mindset. But what about culture? What about change? I'll start to see some of those roles coming through now.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear too, because we know companies in the foundation who rely heavily, right, on consulting firms and MSPs and GSIs, and we hear others, like Kim was saying, Target, where they really lean into building their own areas, and so increasingly it's to quote a great man named Rob Martin in FinOps, it depends, it always depends on the company itself.
Yeah, I'm just replying in the chat there, and there's kind of people saying, what does it mean? Is it a full-time person or is it a part-time person that does FinOps? We're kind of pulling people from different teams and how to quantify it. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and that question was around full-time people, right? And typically in some sort of central team. And sometimes you have the hub and spoke model. I think Jen from Fidelity has shared, they have like a team that she has, and then each of the business units have their own FinOps people embedded as well, which is a common approach. Let's talk a little bit about investments in the people. And the slide is a little confusing when you first glance at it because of the colors, but essentially we asked which personas in your organization are getting formalized training or informal training investments into helping them understand cloud and FinOps and how it all fits together. And we saw the orange there is the folks who are getting formalized training. The yellow is external training, they're going outside. Internal training, formalized, and then the purple is, the green is informal training, lunch and learns, those types of conversations. So the biggest investment in dollars appeared to be for the FinOps team itself related to this, which makes sense, followed by engineers, followed by finance, procurement coming up. Executives, I thought was an interesting one. That's always a big part of the conversation. Kim, where are you investing in the people in the organization, and how are you trying to move the needles?
Yeah, I think that we really align well to this. So we've had most of our FinOps participants who are on the call today are 3 of us are certified. 1 is pursuing his certification. So doing that external investment. And then we do a lot of internal, not formalized training, but more informal training. At Target, we have a lot of opportunities, like we have demo day where everybody in the tech org demonstrates what they're working on. My team just did a demo at our demo day live. And so we do that kind of informal training. We also attend monthly meetings to talk about the efficiency engineering perspective and how we're doing, and show the finances and show our unit economics. So we really have a blend, but I really think it aligns with the results from the survey.
And you mentioned when we spoke before, the executive conversation and sort of winning hearts and minds. How are you helping to enable that in such a large org?
Yeah, so we do attend the direct report meetings for all of the leaders and share that, we've built a dashboard specifically for that conversation. And so we share that with them, and our updates go all the way up to our CIO. And so there's a big focus on this capability.
William, you probably have one of the biggest challenges, just given, the sheer scale of technology organization there and the spend and, people. How do you get such a large org up to speed on these concepts, and how are you investing in education and people?
So we have like one of our, I think we call it the cloud, our internal team is like cloud tech. These guys, they handle all of the provisioning of accounts. They basically manage the infrastructure. And, they'll do like once a month training, a training webinar, if you will, on different like optimization things and stuff like that. So we have training on different services and how to do it effectively and more efficiently across the board. Right now, we're still, I think my biggest focus is trying to get more of the finance org up to speed and get them trained on cloud, because when when I think about it, like our financial analysts are, to me, they're kind of, I call them on the front lines of all of this, right? Every quarter, they're seeing, you know, rising numbers and chargeback and things like that. But a lot of them don't necessarily understand, you know, what their teams are doing, and they maybe don't understand the workloads and things like that. So if they're going to engineer A saying, hey, you know, why is this continually going up and, you know, up and to the right? They just need to, I feel like they need to know what questions to ask, and have a little bit better understanding of how cloud services and third-party cloud services work, to better educate, so that they can have those more, how can I say this, productive conversations with the engineering teams.
I say this.
So for myself, you know, that's one of the goals, and that's what I'm hoping to get out of our org over the next, you know, 6 months to a year, to get our FAs up to speed on, hey, what is third-party cloud, and, you know, and so that they can see what their teams are actually doing and have those productive conversations.
And third-party cloud for you would be the public cloud providers you're using, essentially,
yes,
compared to the on-prem.
Okay. Correct.
Yeah, that whole challenge with, you know, getting the FAs who are used to the on-prem world, I guess, and also the tech leadership where, you know, hey, you know, you can look at last year's spend and, hey, we're going to spend that plus some amount this year versus you know, looking at the run rate and actually understanding where we're going. It's a big challenge.
Yeah. So we're up for it. So this time next year, ask me how we're doing.
By the way, I didn't realize you were in Texas. You know, you're pretty much obligated to come speak at the conference now. I don't know if
that's funny. I'm actually relocating to Austin. I'm in Houston.
Perfect.
I was supposed to come out west, but recently we decided to just make the switch and relocate to Austin probably this summer.
You heard it here, folks. After party at Williams' house. Steve, can you talk through this one? What we found?
Yeah, so we asked where is FinOps a priority within the executives at the organization? As you can see, kind of the green is FinOps is a priority, and the blue not a priority, and the don't know, not sure. So it kind of reflects obviously where people roll up, where we're reporting to. We just talked about, but we did a slice of kind of like, okay, if we take a slice of where it is a priority, where there is buy-in essentially, and then split that by maturity, and then have a look at those chief technical officer and the CFO, we can see the gradual increase. You know, by the more mature practice, there's definitely a requirement or a development of that buy-in between the CTO and CFO. But we also, on the side note, we kind of like did one by cloud spend as well, and it wasn't as high, which was very interesting. So it's almost like the maturity and that buy-in to FinOps is kind of making it a higher priority within the executives. But I'd love to expand. You know, Daryl, I know you've worked with a lot of executives as well, and you know that executive education is a critical part. And your aspects on this?
Yeah, exactly that. Thanks, Steve. So I think executive buy-in becomes increasingly more important as we move in to more mature walk and run phases. I think overall, yes, we need our teams. Yes, we need the practitioners to be there, but we have to have an executive level sponsorship within the organization. And they at least have to know the broad fundamentals, the so-called nuts and bolts around what this looks like, right? So I think the data aligns perfectly well. And I think as organizations mature through crawl, walk, run, we do see a better engagement, a better landing, a better knowledge with the executives. Do we need to do more in that space? More specific education as mentioned on the previous slide? Yes, of course. So yeah, maybe I'm just supporting the data here, not really critiquing it in any way, but I do see that the executive buy-in is fundamentally important to the buy-in of any program, right?
It's interesting, almost chicken and egg thing here. It's like you get more priority as you get to more maturity. And have you gotten that because the practice has evolved, or are you getting the buy-in because there was an executive mandate, you know, from the top? And it's fascinating to watch that go. I'm going to move us forward because we're getting a little short on time as usual. But so last month we shared some of this data, which are what are the top unsolved challenges of FinOps. And the big two, you know, that popped out were getting engineers to take action, which is the same as the previous year. And then accurate forecasting of spend, like such a hard challenge between the finance side, the engineering, dynamicity, if that's a word. What the survey data we want to talk about this time around is actually the inverse of this. So the question we also asked was for folks to essentially stack rank the most important capabilities in the FinOps framework. So the last one was, what do you have unsolved? I can't figure out forecasting. I can't get engineers to take action. This is, what are the things I need to build, the most critical things to my FinOps organization as a foundation? And not surprising, at least to me, was that cost allocation and data analysis were well at the top as fundamental building blocks. Kim, we've talked a lot about data. What's your view on why this is so hard and the importance of getting the right data to people?
Yeah, thinking about it, my team spent the last year really trying to get the data. We wanted to build our tools within Target, so we don't. Not everybody within our organization has access to like Data Studio or any of the Google tools. So it was really important to us to have those visualizations available within our Target tools. So the process of getting the data out of Google into Target's data center, into the analytics tools that we have, that has been a really big challenge. And then to layer on top of that, not all of the data we need for doing our FinOps work is actually in the data from Google. So we have internal configuration information and the whole product taxonomy alignment, and bringing that and joining that and making sure the data is accurate. It's been a really big challenge. And so I feel like we have our GCP data mostly under control right now, but now we have a big challenge ahead of us to get that internal private cloud information in the same order so that we can do more comparison and that kind of thing. So data has been our biggest challenge so far this year.
And I think, as somebody who previously was in the platform world and, don't work in that area now, that's often the argument, I think, for the buy conversation, which is the platform spend a lot of time doing that data. I think, increasingly we see, though, that it's not enough in some cases. And so one of the things that I would love to get your team involved with, Kim, since you're doing this, is we have a working group on open data that is happening with some other large Google users like Palo Alto, because, that aligning and normalizing data is so critical to this. William, how do you all tackle this area of getting the data in line? And does this align with how you see it? Like, is that the first step to enable the forecasting and the shared costs and the budget management and all those areas?
I would agree. So we kind of jumped around a bit looking at this, but right now, we can show all our data back to, regardless of which cloud provider they're using, show all the data back. And what we're trying to get from teams now is, hey, this is okay. Basically what we're trying to do now is basically have these monthly cadences where we'll review the previous month's spend, look at the trend, and then from there, try to align on a forecast, maybe the next quarter, next couple months, even pushing out the remainder of the fiscal year. So we can show the data, we can show back the data, show them the workloads, how much their usage is, what their cost is, and the trends and things like that. And now we're really trying to get aligned on the budget management as well as forecasting. That's kind of the phase we're in right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So in the last 5 minutes we have in this segment, we want to talk about something that I think is near and dear to everybody's heart, which is not the money, the massive money that goes to the cloud providers, but the fortunately smaller set of zeros that goes into our own pockets. This resonated with me yesterday when I was pulling together the deck, which is like, we all spend so much time doing this work. And I'm excited with this resilience theme to hopefully have my evenings not always just be at home in front of the computer in the future. But let's talk about salaries and the data we found. And Steve, I'll pass to you and let me know if you want me to advance the slides.
Yeah, cool. So what we did, we obviously asked this is practitioner only. We removed the people who didn't want to share the salaries. So it doesn't necessarily add up to 100% there, but we really kind of wanted to ban them. So this is all up data, as you're kind of seeing the bulk of things between the 100 and 149,000. But what we wanted to do is this is great. This is a great view of what's happening in the practitioner world, but we wanted to kind of really slice this to really see the difference, what actually impacts these things. So if you move on to the next slide, it's digging deeper into this. The one on the left is where the years of experience. So you can obviously start seeing some bands appearing where, you know, people with more experience, the purple is at the higher end of the salaries. People with the less experience, just starting out, 0 to 1 years is obviously at the top, and then somewhere in the middle is the 2 to 4. But it's giving a clearer picture there. And then we also wanted to kind of split that by seniority. It's like, if you progress in your career and you're advancing your career, does the rewards of the financial gain come with it? And it does. It's very clear that the kind of contributor, the manager, and the kind of director and VP have clear kind of stages. But I'd love to kind of get the group's thoughts, and maybe Kim, kind of like, is this kind of, are there structures out there? Are there kind of bands there? Because I think it's such a new discipline that people are struggling where to put it. Do we put it into finance? Do we put it into engineering? How do we structure it within corporations? And if that aligns with your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it does reflect where things are at today. You know, just I don't know where you see engineer salaries. I think maybe the finance salaries are in alignment. I think it looks like it accurately represents where things are at.
I'm really good at that. Is it? And actually, if you go to the next slide, JR, we can dig into this slightly a bit more as well with where people think they kind of align within finance and engineering.
In the interest, I'm going to reverse panelists, mix up some panelists for a minute. But to me, what stood out from this was that there is like actually a career path, right, a progression in the industry that people can start in the bottom and move up over time. That I thought was really, really great to see as it's something that's evolving. The other thing, I don't know if you all noticed, who is this person with 0 to 1 years of experience making $300,000 a year? Or at least that I think that person found the right job. I'm guessing they live in California, is my hunch. But no, joking aside, in reality, what that probably means, as we're seeing, is that a lot of people are new to FinOps, but have likely been in, you know, deeper engineering or finance roles for years and have moved into this area, you know, at a higher level. And we have seen some of that, obviously, particularly the Bay Area being a hot spot. So people were asking about region and job breakdowns. Here we go, Steve.
So again, region on the left, we're seeing kind of, it's like APAC slightly patchy, I would say. It's kind of like peaks and troughs there across the kind of the mid to lower end. But then EMEA kind of sits firmly kind of up to the middle, and then the US is slightly peaking at the topper end, which is interesting to see. And then this is where people, it's not definitive on where they report to, but it's kind of where do they kind of align to? I think the question was around if it's a FinOps practitioner, engineering or finance, but we are seeing quite a lot of parity between those different disciplines. And it's just interesting to understand. I'd love to kind of understand from the panelists, you know, is why that is, or, you know, I was expecting half the engineering to be way out in front and kind of finance behind, but it's keeping parity. So I'd love to understand a bit more. I mean, William, do you have any perspectives on this?
Yeah.
And
nobody wants to talk salary.
No one wants to talk salary.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, it's I mean, kind of looking at it, it seems, I think I'm thinking about it a different way. So just so I'm reading this correctly, the practitioners that are responding to this, this is where they're located, correct? So
yes.
if I'm looking at APAC, I have to assume that for FinOps, the people that are responding are more companies that are based in APAC. If that makes sense.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
We did ask people to normalize to US dollars, but yeah, this would be the
right. Okay. See, I'm thinking about it, and I'm just like, we don't have anyone in our org in APAC right now doing any FinOps type work. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm just thinking about this, but I don't think I have a comment on it at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah.
One thing that I notice, and JR, I think this goes back to something you said earlier about, you know, having a career path. It looks like You can have an equitable salary no matter which career path you take. If you're in finance or if you're in engineering, you're still going to be rewarded and compensated at a similar rate.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, I kind of with Steve as well. We come out of software in the past, and I always think engineers, make the big bucks, but it was great to see that coming up on both sides. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, I actually talked to a Fortune 500 recently where they said they had to title their FinOps teams as engineers in order to get them the relevant pay that was needed. So I think there's still some of that out there, as an issue. The thing that's really exciting, I think, an opportunity for this group, literally the people on the call, and this has been good and bad for depending which side of the fence you're on, is that, we have moved into this world of such remote work and people are hungry for these FinOps jobs. You look at our jobs board, everybody's got recs open. So I think, hopefully we'll really start to see folks find, the right skill fit set and the right company, regardless of where it is as a result of this. So we are out of time. We're going to dig more into this data over time and split it out. So please feedback when the site launches. Data.finops.org is going to be updated with this soon. We have one new general vendor member as well who joined us. We want to give them a chance to introduce themselves. Chris Johnson from Angle Point, are you available? Looks like you're unmuted. If not, I can come right back to you. Oops, wrong Chris Johnson. I unmuted the wrong one. All right, we'll come back. Chris, shoot a note when you're ready. All right, let's get into the FinOps Foundation working group updates. I believe this is a Vaz slide, isn't it?
Yeah, happy to take it from here, Jared. Thanks so much.
Do you mind introducing yourself too, so for the new folks?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Vasilio Markanastasakis. That's why you can just call me Vaz. I work for the FinOps Foundation. My role here is with helping define best practices and standards. I own the framework. And it's great to see so many people joining our summit call today. On a side note, while we're talking about salaries, I was reflecting on our state of FinOps. One of the top challenges was getting engineers to take action. And I was thinking the person who's making the $300,000 a year is probably the one person who doesn't have that challenge. So maybe that's why they get paid so well. Anyway, that's just kind of crazy thought in my head. But so this section, we're going to talk a little bit about FinOps Foundation working groups. Really, FinOps Foundation working groups is a place where the community can come together to help produce content and guides to benefit the community. So as we say, for the community, by the community. This slide is just showcasing some of the different working groups and special interest groups that we have going on at the moment. They're in various states. Some are just getting started. Some are working on proposals, and some are actually in flight, actively working on their first sprint. Just as a side note, for folks who aren't familiar with working groups typically are a collection of community members that come together, work on a sprint. Sprints are usually 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes 10 weeks. And for bigger projects that are being tackled, groups come together multiple times in multiple sprints in order to achieve their goals. I think the next slide, GR, if I'm not mistaken, is one of our working groups. There was a lot of great questions in the Zoom chat around bans and definitions for careers. And if I can just turn it over to Stacy really quick. Mm-hmm. I think Stacy, keep me honest here.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to introduce Diana Lascano, who is one of our community leads for this sprint. And she's just going to talk about where we are with this current sprint and what we're hoping to get out of it. So Diana, over to you.
Thanks, Stacy. Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Like Stacy said, I am Diana Lascano. I currently work with PennyMac as their Senior Cloud Optimization Manager. So what does it take to become a FinOps practitioner or advance your FinOps career? These are the questions that the foundation is constantly asked. So the Advancing FinOps Careers Working Group is looking at what it takes to do just that, advance our FinOps careers. For our first sprint, we are focused on our data collection, and we will use this data to build out artifacts for future sprints, such as career ladders, recommended skills and training, as JR mentioned earlier, scholarships, and best practices. So we are just wrapping up the collection of the data around the job descriptions and the FinOps careers. Next, we will then have another sprint to analyze the data that's collected in those working groups and the State of FinOps survey, which will then present our findings at our next summit. And of course, we are looking to build that community of FinOps practitioners, and we'd love to see you get involved. We have a 6-minute survey questionnaire in the FinOps careers channel, and it is open until March 15th. So if you could hop into that, I promise it doesn't take more than 5-6 minutes. And also, we are looking for more people to participate in analyzing the data. So it's not too late to join that working group. And that's all I have. Thanks, Stacy.
Yeah, no, thank you, Diana. So folks, I just went ahead and posted that link to the survey that it really is like a 5-6 minute questionnaire. I did it in the member calls and also the working group channel, and I just dropped it into chat too. We'd love to get some more information, and so we can start analyzing the data and make some great recommendations.
It's so cool, Diana, to see you at PennyMac now. I know you used to be on the vendor side, and such a great example of how people are moving around and evolving their careers in this space. So thanks for continuing to join the party with us. Ashley, can you share a little bit on this slide? We're a little behind, so I'm gonna give you 30 seconds.
Yep, I'll go super fast. So last time we met, we talked about, we were teasing the new enterprise membership. When the last 3 weeks, we've been interviewing about 18 different enterprise companies. So as important as it is for us to get the perspective for the practitioners, we're also talking to the big enterprises, and we're hearing the same thing back from them. They're needing additional help with retraining staff that want to move between different roles. They're looking for being able to retain existing staff. That's creating some onboarding for their staff, and then also they're looking to recruit. They want to get that recognition out there so they can get some of their open roles filled. So this is a lot of stuff that's going on right now with the enterprise membership program that we're trying to figure out what we can put together for these enterprises.
Thank you, Ashley. And Ashley, for those of you who don't know, just joined the FinOps Foundation full-time last month and was the director of cloud FinOps at Pearson. So she's working with a lot of our enterprise organizations to help them move all these things forward now. William, we talked about your role already, so I'm going to pull this one out and head forward, and let's talk about education. Stacy and Rob.
I was so excited, I forgot to unmute myself. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start, and I'll hand it off to Rob. So we have a really, really exciting thing. I'm so excited to announce this. If you want to advance the screen. We are excited to announce that the FinOps Foundation is going to start an official scholarship program. We're developing a program with the goal of awarding $100,000 of FinOps training and certification to kind of build out that next generation of FinOps practitioners. We plan to do this by partnering with colleges and universities, some really great established nonprofits that are already providing technical resources in education to their community. And of course, we'll have applications for folks to submit individuals. We really are looking forward to actively working with the community and look to support traditionally underrepresented or marginalized groups in technology. So we'll provide more information later on how to get involved, how to apply for scholarships. But I'm super excited that we're able to do this and help build our community and help some folks that might want to get into this career path.
Yeah, thank you so much for Stacy for spearheading this. And anybody who's interested either personally or wants to recommend a group, if you want to just email training@finops.org. We are looking to partner with other groups, particularly those representing underrepresented populations. So would love to figure out how we can roll this out and actually get this money deployed.
We'll have some more information as we build this out, but super excited.
We're also looking at doing this for the conference, the in-person conference. So if you want to come to Austin, you can't afford to reach out to us and let's talk.
Or if you're a FinOps practitioner, say, who's making $300,000 a year and you want to match our funds, that's also acceptable. So please reach out to us there.
Right on, Rob.
at rob@finops.org. That would be the place to contact that. No, thank you. This is FinOps education is exciting. I'm going to talk to you in a second about our FinOps professional course, which has been kicked off now for a month or so, and we're starting to see some really exciting results from that. As I've talked about before, FinOps teams are really built in these concentric circles, right? With a core team, and then all of those FinOps adjacent personas and roles who help and support us in the organization as we build our FinOps culture. And our training and certification programs are also structured in this concentric circle of expertise. So we've been doing for a long time the FinOps team training and the FinOps certified practitioner. And we have had for several months now a builder team of both staff members and FinOps Foundation members working on this FinOps professional certification to complement that. And so there are 1,600 of you now plus that have FinOps practitioner, and we'll start to see our first FinOps professionals coming on board now. And I would like to have Parker Nankalis from who has been a member of our FinOps Builder community from the very beginning, from back in September, October, to talk a little bit about how that team is structured.
So the FinOps professional course is a very advanced program that includes instructor-led, self-paced, and project-based work, and that then culminates in the certification. And there are service requirements, content contribution requirements. By the end of the certification, not only will you have studied the framework and passed an exam, but you also will have had practical experience. You will have demonstrated your expertise through those service and content contribution requirements, as well as having participated in over 8 hours of instructor-led and project-based work with a cohort of 6 to 12 other people. And for me, that's what's been really valuable, is everyone in the cohort comes with unique perspectives. Everyone's got a different background, different experience. And it's really interesting. I've faced FinOps challenges in my own organization, and I have my own strengths when it comes to FinOps. But the other people in the cohort have had different experiences, different challenges. They have different strengths in different areas. And or we face the same challenges and we handle them in different ways. And that's something that's really benefited me, is just those interactions, those discussions, learning from other people. I feel much more prepared if I were to be leading a FinOps team at a different organization to jump into a role like that. So just a little update of how things are going. The first FinOps teams instructor-led session was on February 22nd, and there were 9 non-builder participants in that. We so far have published 25 modules, which are over 26 hours of content. Ultimately, that we're expecting to have about 40 modules published. And the participants so far have been sharing their experiences, documenting their experiences. 3 projects have been approved so far to help those participants meet their service and content contribution requirements. And the first FinOps strategy instructor-led session is going to be on March 24th. And then on the 25th, the exam is going to be available for people to start taking and start earning their certifications.
Yeah, so this time next month, thanks Parker, this time next month, we'll have our first group of FinOps professionals certified, and you'll start to see those badges pop up on Slack.
Hey Rob, an idea I forget somebody threw out as well. If it's done before the London event, it would be fantastic to maybe highlight some of those people there as well.
Yes.
About the same timing.
There may be a couple in there. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Stacy, Rob, and Parker on that. We're gonna, I threw this back in just to remind you, because we really want you to come to this, but I'm gonna jump now to Angle Point Chris Johnson, who I think is back, and do my janky overlay here. Chris, are you there?
Yes, I am. Sorry, awesome. I had to step away at the worst possible moment.
No worries. I'm gonna give you the 30-second timer. Here we go.
Great. So I'm Chris Johnson, Executive Vice President at Angle Point. If you're not familiar with Angle Point, we're a global provider of SaaS and FinOps services and software licensing and IT asset management services that have been consistently ranked by Gartner as a leader. We find that when FinOps and ITAM functions are aligned, that both become more effective. So we're really looking forward to increasing engagement with the broader FinOps community here to help drive that alignment. And our team is super excited to join the foundation. So thanks.
Thank you for hitting the time too. We're going to mention it later, but we do have a working group, which is how FinOps intersects with ITAM and ITFM and some other areas. Notably, one of the things we're noticing is most of the other tech disciplines want to generally say FinOps is a part of them and it all rolls up into the other disciplines. I think we're the only discipline that says FinOps is its own thing and the others are their own, and they're not really all part of one. So it'd be interesting to see what that group comes out with, because we see FinOps as a fairly unique set of skills that needs to complement all the others, and over time, it'd be interesting to see how they become one.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
With that, the next big meaty piece of content, this working group has been going for a number of months. They meet diligently every week. It's a great mix of both vendors and practitioners. They've been working on some challenges that we pulled out from the State of FinOps data. I'm going to touch briefly on this because we'll share more later in the site, but looking at how spend breakdowns from what reported came back from the survey results, 25% of the spend is moving into containers. And there's a big variety of strategy of how people are doing clusters, whether they're doing lots of clusters with each one dedicated to a team or product, or big clusters that are split out across business units and teams. And so this group decided on the back of getting this data that they would tackle the first two reported challenges from the survey. Those challenges being just how the heck do I report container costs accurately? And then second, how do I establish and critically maintain metadata within my container deployment? How do I label it? How do I get the namespaces? What do I use? Where do I start? So with that, we've got two, who dropped those uncertified badges on there? We've got two uncertified speakers, David Sturs from MimeCurve and Bala from Aptio. I got to give a big shout out to David. David's done a couple nights this week of up till 3 a.m. putting together these slides. He's been tirelessly driving this group forward for months. David, you're I think the epitome of the perfect working group leader, and thank you for all your tireless efforts for the community, and thank you for putting the time and effort into this. Lots of thank yous, lots of gratitude. So David, I'm going to do a spotlight for you, so you pop up there and get into your slides. Let me know when you want me to click ahead.
All right, thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. JR, first of all, I must say the badge of shame is quite effective. So that means you will see me certified pretty soon. So this slide was shown earlier. And we wanted to show you where our working group sits in. Can you go next? I believe that some of you are familiar with the framework and the content that we have here, but we wanted to emphasize. And if you go next, so this is the capabilities with lots of great material. And I highlighted here the cost allocation, which ties perfectly also in the container cost allocation, which is a subset of it. And if you go next, we will also see that the projects that we also have here there's a long article with lots of useful information about how to calculate container costs. So of course, this is also heavily related to that. But here we wanted to really tell you why do we need another working group, as we have so much great content already.
And David, if I could jump in just for the larger audience, containers is a good example of a group that has been ongoing. It's taking on new projects. So if you want to see some of the old projects, this on FinOps.org, there's essentially a white paper playbook that was done last year about this, and they're continuing to build on that, which is the idea model.
So maybe very briefly about the SIG Containers group. So I'm the chair of the SIG Containers group, and we create several working groups. Today we talk about the container cost allocation working group. So the real vision of this is that you get digestible real life use cases for every FinOps maturity level. And based on practical approaches, visual real-life examples, and examples per persona. And we would like to show you the use case that we selected in the past months to make it more tangible. So this is very, very briefly. There's a larger write-up within the working group that you can look at, but very briefly, we have a shared container platform that runs workloads for multiple teams. So on purpose, we included all major persona groups, let's say, in the use case. And what we also found out, which was very important, is when you go to the next slide, JR, is that the context matters. So, and to give you an idea, so because people in the working group came up with very valid feedback and challenge it, what we put together, what you will see in a minute, so that, and here the context is, we set the context as we have one cloud account, let's say it's production, we have one cluster that is shared, and we have a namespace per team. So just to give you an idea how many dimensions and variables you have in such a scenario. And of course, you have all the complexity with the distributed systems, multiple nodes of a cluster, and so on and so forth. Just to mention, here storage and database is out of scope of the container cost allocation as of now, but of course, that needs to be considered. So they are currently outside of a container management solution. So we focused obviously on Kubernetes, and we would like to show you our approach. So looking back, so we did like 4 major steps, and we would like to walk you through. So first one was that we wanted to collect labels, not just make up some. And no, okay, can you go back first? Yeah, okay. So we want to collect labels, deduplicate them, assign the labels to personas, and then we also rated the maturity in like crawl or run stage. Okay, now we can go next, please. So here we collected lots of labels from various places. And so luckily we had some quite some vendors in the working group that were able to provide us. If you look at the very right, we got lists of top 10 or even more labels, and with a distinct count, or also just by the scanning order of labels that are seen in the wild on like multi-tenant FinOps platforms. And the other labels, also the pie chart is from vendors. And the other label schemas are also like good working real life label schemas that people are actually using to report on certain things. Yeah, so can you go next?
Yeah, did want to shout out here. This is a great way that vendors can interact with the community. David had shared that Cloud Zero, FinOut, KubeCost, Cloud Health, and Cloudability all contributed to this data. So thank you for doing that. It's a great way that we can use the vendors in this, and also the vendors get visibility. Love seeing this approach. Thanks for doing this, David.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So step 2 was deduplication. Here, you might have realized this is a spreadsheet. Yes, spreadsheets are very useful for working groups to put these kind of things together. And you can see that we identified a lot of aliases, and we picked one variant. Otherwise, you have so many different labels, so that it can easily, get really hard to talk about this. And what you can see here is the deduplication. We picked like application name, like application and not app, and so on and so forth. So this is all lowercase, love it. Great comment. Yes, deduplication. Okay, so let's go to the next step. So what we then did in step 3 is we assigned it to personas. So what we did here is like executives, business, finance, and engineering. And with the working group members, we were talking about, discussing, and where it says, application, just one example, is executive might not care about the cost per application, but the business owner and finance and engineering most likely do. But so why you might think this is, you have a different opinion on that, this is exactly what we would like to hear from you. So there will be multiple ways to interact with us, and we will let you know very soon where to do. There's a breakout session today that you can join us and give your feedback. Highly appreciate if you come. And you can also join the Slack channel where we are working in to challenge what we put here together in a yes-no metrics. Okay, can you go next? 4th step was rating the maturity. So and now you might wonder, what is maturity? Yes, crawl or run, but how do we classify it? So mainly we classified it with the level of detail. And if you look at one of the run stages, which is like tech stack, the second from below, we believe this is a high maturity that is interesting for some personas. Why high maturity? Because to label your tech stack, like logging or monitoring, dashboarding, metrics, etc., however you define your tech stack, we consider as a high maturity. While other things like a cost center is something that makes finance pretty happy, we believe. And is we see in the very early stage in crawl. Okay, so while this was brought together by the working group with, yes, vendors, practitioners from the real world, we thought we need to do a reality check on that. What does it mean? So reality check means we were kind of interviewing or walking in the shoes of different personas, because all the labeling, that should have a purpose. That means the purpose should be like a reporting, getting questions answered. And here at this stage, I would like to hand over to Bala, who will walk us through the personas.
Thanks, David. So based on the approach and the use case explained by David, we then looked into the different FinOps persona and what data information they would be interested in, like what are the key metrics, KPIs a persona would be interested in or needs insight, and then looked into aligning the different label schemas collected to drive those metrics. The first persona here is the executive. This persona could be a CEO, CTO, or even the VP head of infrastructure, whereby their primary focus would be in guiding their organization's cloud investments, driving accountability for cloud cost, building transparency, and ensuring teams are being efficient and not exceeding budgets. So then it came to understanding what information or metrics they would be interested or need insight into for their role. Some of those KPIs metrics can be the cost of goods sold, production spend, revenue growth, unit cost, etc. Then the question raises on, how could we drive those metrics having applications running in containers? This is where the label schema comes in handy and will help drive or track those metrics by grouping and aligning the right labels for the cost allocation. Since these are key value pairs used to identify attributes of objects that are meaningful and relevant to users, labels enable users to map their own organizational structures into system objects in a loosely coupled fashion. For our use case, specific to the executive persona, some of the key metrics can be driven using the application, team, customer labels, and they have been called out based on the FinOps maturity level they fall under. This could be different for different use cases, but we do believe application and team labels are some commonly used ones and should be considered during the initial transition to containers if you're in the crawl phase. Next one, Chair. So FinOps procurement is our next persona. For someone in a finance or procurement role, their primary focus would lie in increasing accountability for cloud cost, identifying unallocated spend, as well as establishing showbacks and chargebacks to increase financial accountability and to drive budgets and forecast accuracy, etc. Then the question would come down to the metrics, KPIs they would be interested to track, and how does label schema support it. For this persona, some key KPIs would be like understanding and tracking cost specific to your cost center, departments, understanding trends to drive budget and forecast accuracy, etc. All these metrics can be driven by having a right label schema, like the cost center, department, and the service called out for our use case. Moving on to the next one. So the next persona is literally the business and the product owner. The primary goal for a product owner would be to quickly bring new products and features to market with an accurate price point. But in order to make those decisions, there are a few underlying factors to be considered, like predicting how much cloud infrastructure will factor into the feature product price, connecting product decisions with business outcomes, guiding teams to make good cloud investments. A lot of KPIs and metrics can drive that. The key metrics here would be understanding the cost for your services, cost per product, which would be the unit economics, as well as having visibility on the cost of goods for your product and how the cost is split between teams, etc. For our scenario, you can build a report using the right label schema that aligns to the metrics. We have called out like an application, team, product, department, environment, customer that aligns to our use case and based on the FinOps maturity they fall under. Next one. So the final persona is engineering. For someone in that role, they should be able to identify the service or application ownership, drive accountability to the engineering teams that are responsible for the application services, provide increased visibility to cloud costs to the engineering teams. Some of the key metrics are dashboard visualizations. They would be interested at looking into are the cost per deployed service utilization rates, daily hourly cost trends on labels like component, environment, tech stack, etc. Daily view would give longer time span trends specific to cost spent on a weekday versus weekend, and an hourly view to understand the usage by the time of the day. The engineering of the platform team does play a major role creating cloud resources and are also involved in identifying the labels that are required to monitor the infrastructure costs and configuring them. In our use case, the labels that aligns to support the metrics are the application, team, environment, tech stack, service component based on the FinOps maturity level they fall under. Next one there. So putting it all together, now that we gave a preview of the different personas, their objectives, key metrics, and how we could align labels to report those metrics, the next step for us is to merge all these label schemas into a label dictionary. David, back to you to walk us through the framework.
Okay, thanks. Voila. Okay, so let's see what we put together. We have the label schema of the executive, and the next one is the label schema of finance, 3 stages that we identified so far. The next one is the business product owner with quite some labels that gives some insight for these personas. And last but not least, we have engineering operations with the same amount of labels and their majority. So now what we did is we started merging it together. If you go next, then JR, you will see that we initialized the merging. If we go next. So we merged the crawl stage. Okay, next. So then we merged the walk stage into it. So it's also here, you might have noticed that there is some deduplication happening. So for example, look at executive and business product owner. So they both are interested in the cost per customer. And yeah, so also while merging, there is some deduplication. And yeah, finally, we merged the run stage into it to come up. If you go next. So with a full set of a label schema that is deduplicated and aiming to make many personas happy yeah, on all stages of maturity. And if you go next, and this is what we call so far, this is our artifact of the working group, the opinionated context-based FinOps label schema 0.1. So, and here we marked also where you can, so you can easily spot which personas would be interested the most in which label. And the winner is, so far, it's team. It's also related to the use case. Okay, so this is what we brought up. Happy to discuss. Join the breakout, join us, the working group. So far, it's every Thursday. Yeah, so looking forward.
Wow, so many great comments in the chat there and in Slack, David. What and this is, I guess, a question for both you and Steve Trask, because he has to build some of this stuff. What do you see as the outputs of this? Like, we got great slides, but how can people take advantage of this? Are we going to build any open source tooling around it? Are the slides going to be available? Where does this go? So yeah, maybe I can spoil already some ideas that we have, so that we definitely want to bring this to the FinOps.org website, so that people can start identifying themselves as one of the personas and get some labels created. So we were thinking of like a label generator maybe for the FinOps Foundation with multi-dimensions, so that people can use for themselves. But the challenge here so far is the context, because what we would like to continue to work out, and also hear other response, in which environment your containers are running today. The survey data gave us great insight. Of course, we built on that. And by the way, the new survey results was kind of reinforcement from the initial survey that we did. So that was quite nice to see that we continue and seem to work on the right stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we can produce something dynamic on the website, so you can kind of filter and you can kind of see it by persona and maturity. I think in the short term, just moving to the breakout, and you can kind of ask David and Barbara any questions on this. I see that Slack is full of questions, and I'm sure we're going to kind of, the documentation is going to come out of this working group as well and be available, as well as the slides shown today from them.
And both and Bala as well. What was that?
And I'll say, coming to the working group itself, like, the next step for us would be in picking up a new container topic challenge, and we'll be using the survey result as a reference too.
Perfect. Excellent. So we're going to talk a quick overview about the active and new working groups that are started. And then we're going to get into the breakouts, where you can dive into those working groups if you want in a small group, or you can stay in the main room to talk more about State of FinOps data. And pass to Vaz to tell us what's on the docket.
Yeah, it's a great segue. Thanks, David and Bala. A lot of excitement in the Zoom chat. And also, just to highlight, this is a perfect example of, the power of the community coming together in a working group. There's a lot of folks behind the scenes supporting David and Bala. And if you folks like that presentation, please consider joining a working group or proposing a working group if there's any topics that you feel aren't being covered. Having said that, here's a list, a preview of some of the working groups that are active right now. So these are folks that have submitted a proposal, written out an abstract, set out a scope, and are planning to produce output for their first sprint. We have the intersection of ITFM and TBM and FinOps, as GR mentioned earlier. How do these existing standards intersect with FinOps? I'm not sure if Alex is on the call and he would like to chime in and add a little color. Alex, are you there?
I think we're going to adopting FinOps because I believe Alex is away at the moment.
I think he's not on the call.
Okay, cool. And then adopting FinOps, Anderson, do you want to chime in here and talk a little bit about your working group?
Sure. We just started this working group, and we are now working on these two deliverables. One is to produce a white paper that tells what are the pitfalls about adopting FinOps, and the other is to get more into the details of the main KPIs that someone needs to start tracking out of the door when they're starting FinOps, so that they can see the how they're advancing at FinOps in their implementation. So we just have started, looking forward for other contributors in this group.
Awesome. Thanks, Anderson. We've already talked a little bit about the advancing FinOps careers in a previous slide. So we've got another working group that's exploring public sector and how FinOps fits there. Melvin, if you're on the call, would you like to just give a little bit of an update on where your working group's at?
Hey, guys, absolutely.
Hey, Melvin.
How you guys doing? Good. A couple of things. One, we're finishing up the government playbook. It should be on the website for everybody to review sometime by next week. We've got a list of areas where we found that government and the private sector are a little different. And so we're developing what we call specialty plays. And we're going to be tackling that in our next sprint. And our specialty play is really, the first one is centered around forecasting the government budgets in a 2-year cycle in advance of receiving funds. And so we want to start to look at how do you do forecasting in a FinOps environment. And then we're also looking at acquisition and how we start to procure reserve instances as another potential playbook. But our next one out of the chute after we finish this basic one is going to be forecasting. We'd love to have anybody that's interested in joining. You can see the Slack channel there, and we've got a standing meeting on Mondays at 1 for anybody that's interested. Thank you for the opportunity.
So Melvin, I had to stop the screen
Melvin.
share so everybody could appreciate your bow tie. Thanks for being the best dressed guy here.
Also love that.
Want to give you a shout out as well, as I did to David. I think you've been like one of the strongest working group leaders in pushing this forward. I've seen a lot of outputs and a lot of excitement. So thank you for all your efforts as well.
Yeah, it's a great team effort, and I'll say the only reason I got a bow tie is that we are back in the office. So, yes, exciting times.
Awesome. And Melvin, for the folks on the Zoom, Melvin highlighted an important item here. You'll notice on this slide, there's above the green lines, there is the name of the Slack channel. So if you are a member and you are in Slack, you can join those Slack channels to contribute and talk with the folks working in those working groups. Jared, do you mind going to the next slide? So on this slide, we have one more working group that is active. It was just recently approved by our technical advisory committee. That's a sustainability working group, and they're looking at FinOps with sustainability in that intersection. Stephen, are you on the call, or Mark?
Yeah, Mark's certainly here.
Oh, great. Do you want to add a little color for what you all are working on?
Yeah, so we're in the very early days of the working group, so we're just at the starting point. We're calling it almost sprint zero. The aim is to actually help everyone understand the impact that FinOps has on the carbon footprint of public cloud workloads, to try and provide some clarity on the actual calculations themselves, and to get some consistency across the major cloud vendors, and also particularly to hopefully align with the carbon calculation methodology being used by external kind of third parties and external parts of the technology stack, including the world of co-location data centers as well. So in our first phase, we're aiming for something very simple, which is to get absolute clarity on what is our vision and outcome, because we see this as being a very long-term working group that's going to be very iterative. I don't think we'll ever finish. I think we'll be constantly improving and striving to get better. But the first aim is to work out who else we need to work with outside of the FinOps Foundation, what our actual vision is and what we want to achieve, and who needs to be involved to help us get there.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. You basically striving to constantly improve is the FinOps way. So that's perfect. And the other thing I was going to mention, as many sprints as you want, as long as you're producing some great stuff for our community, I think folks will be happy to have that working group keep going. The last three working groups here are working groups that are just getting started. Some are in proposal state. Some are really just pre-proposal. They're just looking for support from the community, folks that are willing to work on the proposal and get involved and kind of produce content for the community, just like you've seen from the other presentations today. So we have a working group that's kind of working on the proposal right now, open standards for cloud billing data. I'm not sure if Max or Gilbert are on the call. I'll just give a moment. If you are, Max or Gilbert, if you're on the call, do you mind just chiming in and talk a little bit about that working group?
Yeah, this is Max. Can you hear me?
Hey, Max.
Yeah, so FinOps for AI ML, really looking to understand, what some of the nuances may be of applying the FinOps principles to AI and machine learning workflows as opposed to kind of your standard applications. Looking for kind of co-conspirators at the moment and would love to chat with folks later.
Awesome. We actually have two Maxes on this slide. That was Max Williams. He's spearheading the AI ML FinOps working group, and he's definitely looking for folks who want to contribute to that working group and get it going. The other Max I was looking for is Max from the Open Standards for Cloud Billing Data. That working group is got a Slack channel as well. If you're interested, that group is exploring code base normalization across, at the moment, we're considering three of the cloud vendors, the big three, AWS, Azure, and Google. And then finally, a working group that's just starting is the unit economics working group. I think Eric Peterson is on the call.
Yeah.
Eric, do you want to add a little color there about what you're looking for? I think you're looking for engagement and community members to join.
I'd love to. Yeah. I'm right now looking for practitioners who are out there trying to doing this today, folks who are really passionate about this or honestly just trying to get started and trying to understand what it is. We started a conversation just the other week just about what is unit economics even in the first place and how does that relate to things like unit cost. So if you are a practitioner focused on trying to bring cost to customer, cost per transaction, cost per unit of value that you deliver from your cloud platforms and trying to understand how to calculate those things, budget those things out, I would love to have you join us in the working group Slack channel, and we'll get a proposal started soon once we get some more contributors to that. So really looking forward to working on this a lot over the next coming months.
Thanks, Eric. And just a reminder to everybody, while we covered a few working groups that are either active or just getting started, don't forget to go to finops.org. In the project section, there's an overview page where you can see all our special interest groups and working groups and see their Slack channels listed there. I will exhale and hand it back to JR.